Welcome to I Wish You Could Hear This, where we explore great stories and simple proven steps to help you thrive in life, faith, and relationships.
In our research, we've heard hundreds of hope-filled strategies for marriage, parenting, leadership, and life that are grounded in science and consistent with biblical truth. And now you can hear them too.
I'm Shaunti Feldhahn.
And I'm Jeff Feldhahn.
And welcome to I Wish You Could Hear This. On today's podcast, we are going to be doing something a little bit unusual because I just asked Jeff an hour or two ago as we were having our morning coffee, we should do a podcast on this. And one of our other guests had to postpone because they weren't feeling well, and we had the studio time, and we're like, let's go ahead and dive in. And I know that spontaneity is not your favorite thing.
Now, see, I like spontaneity unless I'm actually on the spot to come up with something clever or witty or something like that, which is pressure that I put on myself.
Yes, and that is not no pressure here, because we are going to be diving into a very interesting situation that happened over the last couple of months based on a podcast that we did where a small clip went viral when we were on a podcast with Ryan Miller, the Jesus People podcast.
It was his podcast, and we were the guests.
Yes, good guy.
Great guy.
Good guy. Had a really interesting conversation, but there was a conversation about what happens in conflict where we shared one of our kind of main things that we talk about with some of the differences between men and women. Yep, that men can do to help reassure their wives. The clip went viral, had a bazillion comments on his TikTok and Instagram, and we saw so many things that were confusions that women had of how does this work and is this legitimate, that I thought, let's actually come down, record this, and use you. Thank you for being a gamer, Jeff. Use you as a kind of answer man in order to help us go a little bit further in this understanding.
I'll give it my best effort.
Okay.
That's what I can promise. What I did find, in order to conform to the clip that we're gonna share with y'all, is that I became known in the clip as Blue Shirt Guy.
Yes.
And so in honor of that, for those who are able to watch this particular podcast, I'm wearing a blue shirt.
He's wearing a blue shirt just to get into the spirit. So let me say that let's go ahead and play this little clip, and we're going to say this is a very screen grab resolution of Ryan Miller, the Jesus People podcast, that he posted on Instagram.
I think most women don't understand how much shame men feel on a regular basis. And when we feel inadequate, that brings shame.
Yep.
And where we feel most inadequate is, I don't know what's going on in here. So we're in a fight right now. You're really quick. You're telling me exactly how you feel. You've mapped this thing in 30 seconds. I don't know what's happening. So what I'm hearing you say is it's really gracious of a wife to go to her husband and to say, I'm having some stuff happen here. I know you're having some stuff happen here. Can we chat about this tonight? Give him a beat, get him a break to process it, and then come back to the table.
So here's the thing. The guys also have a responsibility in this too.
Sure.
Because we don't understand what's going on inside of them. When we walk away because we're frustrated, all of a sudden that's triggering inside of her. Like, are we okay? Is he really upset with me? Is this the beginning of several possible negative things happening in our relationship? So we walk away and we kind of then go to the computer and start gaming or doing something just to kind of get some distance.
Yeah.
She's not given that luxury.
Yeah,
all of a sudden her brain is kicking in with her insecurities about me, about our relationship. So we as guys, just as we're asking our wives to give us a little bit of grace and space, we need to then take that position. I'm upset in the moment and I need to figure out what I'm feeling, but I need to reassure her about ourselves in that moment so I can get the space so she can then also have some relaxation and calm. So I need to say something to the lines of, babe, I'm really upset right now, and I just got to unpack my thoughts. I got to figure out what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, all of that, and I'm going to need some time. But I want you to know we're okay.
Okay, so just to review, we were talking about something that is a very, very common situation in relationship and marriage.
In Jeff and Shaunti's marriage.
Certainly in our marriage, where there is often occasions, and we've had other podcasts where we've talked about the fact that statistically men are more likely to need space to process in the middle of conflict, and that can often feel a little unloving as they pull away to get that space.
And as Ryan said in that clip, one of the reasons is because I don't really know what's going on inside of me.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand that along with trying to understand you, what's going on with you in the moment. And so I'm trying to balance and figure these things all out, and it kind of furs up the gears.
Yes, and it's a great way of putting it. We've heard men say that over the years, that it furs up the gears,
Yeah.
something like that. And so one of the things you're encouraging men to do is, because I was saying, women, let's understand that he may, if he's like this, which not every man is, but if he is, he may need that space. And you said, but guys, remember that as you pull away, it's painful to her, because she's like, I don't know if we're okay. So you suggested what we suggest in our books.
Yeah, there's some simple steps that you can take, and the most important is, to reassure her, to let her know that, look, I'm struggling to try to figure out what I'm feeling. I'm upset right now, and I just need some space. But I want you to know we're going to be okay. We are okay right now.
And that's a huge reassurance. Okay,
Right.
So small little clip. It ended up going viral. I don't know how many views it's had, but Ryan, I know that in the first day or two, it was already at almost 500,000, I think, in the first few days. And so one of the things that came out of it that was hilarious was that you started to see a trend in all the comments. And we're going to link to the actual clip in the show notes. But here's what ended up coming up in all these comments. And I screen grabbed some of this and made notes on some of it. Blue shirt guy gets it. Wow, that man in blue shirt is really wise. And now that one comment had 1,700 likes. Just the comment, right? And there were, like, you listen to the guy in the blue shirt. Yay, I love this gentleman who is speaking. He's not asking women to baby their men. He's asking men to be men. Preach it for the people at the back. Blue shirt legend. Yes, he nailed it. The feeling of safety and validation is the absolute key in the relationship communication cycle. Blue shirt gets it. Lots of claps for the blue shirt. There's also like lots of blue shirt exclamation point clap emoji. And then a few sweet comments like, my hubby is a blue shirt, which I love. I think that's adorable. And so before we go any further, I want to ask you to tell a story of something that happened yesterday, which got us thinking about it and talking about this over coffee, which is why we're sitting here recording this podcast.
Sure. So I work for a large foundation. I'm an attorney, so that's what I do part-time, along with some other part-time things.
Well, and along with our research and speaking
Exactly.
and all that.
All of that stuff, you balance it and you pay the mortgage at the end of the month, and it seems
One
to
way
work.
or another.
But I was riding up the elevator with one of my colleagues, and she said, my sister just a day or two ago sent me this clip, and you were in it. And again, this this podcast was a couple of months earlier, so the clip apparently is still making the rounds. But she said, my boyfriend and I are really having a real struggle with a few things in our relationship, and conflict is one of them, and how we approach it.
And this is a long-term boyfriend, right?
Yeah,
This isn't
long-term
like-
boyfriend. Yeah. Right. And I was sharing that with my sister, and she said, look, I think something would be really helpful to you. And she sent me this clip.
The blue shirt guy clip.
The blue shirt guy clip. And I couldn't believe it. It was you, and what you said was so spot on. And I then sent it over to my boyfriend. And I'll tell you, it's made all the difference.
And here's the thing, okay? And we're going to get into some of the questions, some of the concerns, some of the things that came up in these long comments that there's just, it's fascinating if you scroll through the thread just on this one Instagram post. There's a little microcosm of a lot of the debates that are happening in our culture today about the differences between men and women, and about some of the things that maybe people don't like about the differences between men and women, or don't want to believe that are the differences between men and women.
Yeah,
What?
I did watch. I very, very rarely ever watch anything that has me with a clip or read the comments or anything like that, just
Okay.
because I'm, I'm self-conscious. You know how you may be standing in taking a picture with 30 other people, and when you see the picture, you don't see the other 29 people. You immediately focus on yourself and go, oh no, look at the way I was smiling or not smiling or whatever. And that's what happens every time in a clip. So I just don't go there. But anyways, I did read a couple of these comments, and one of them I thought was interesting, where I don't know whether it was from a man or a woman, said something along the lines of, look, for the women out there, if you want someone who's just like you, that's not a man.
Don't date a man.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because we are different, and it is that trips
That
us
was
up
a woman
all
who
the
said
time.
that.
It was okay.
Mhm.
So, anyways,
I've read these comments too many times that I actually know that was a woman.
There
Yeah.
you go. But it is that thing that we have to first, starting point is recognize that we are different. And two, recognize that we should extend some goodwill in that difference, in not to necessarily watch it or look at it through a lens of they're just trying to be difficult. They're just trying to hurt me.
Yes. And I have to read a couple of the comments,
Sure.
and then I want to, if we can
Ask Jeff.
ask Jeff
Ask
about
Blue
some of these.
Shirt Guy.
Ask Blue Shirt
There you
Guy
go.
about some of these. Now, the first thing I just want to react to, because this was fascinating to me. Here is a very interesting, vulnerable, and surprising comment. The number of turns my brain took watching this. I hated the first half of the first sentence, which is when Ryan was like, look, guys sometimes feel this insecurity and shame about
Not being able to express
how they feel. So she said, I hated the first half of the first sentence and I almost swiped away, but then I found it really insightful. Then the gray-haired man came in clutch.
See, this is why I don't watch or read comments.
Okay, then the gray-haired man came in clutch, holding the young man, meaning Ryan, young man's insightfulness to a level of accountability he hadn't considered. Now, I think that is harsh, because what do you mean accountability? He was just explaining how he felt. Anyway, but then the name The Jesus People podcast came up, and my jaw nearly hit the ground. If Christians are using their platforms to have intelligent, fair, and kind conversations like this, I love it for them. And I instantly, when I saw that, I thought, that tells you what that, because I'm assuming this was like somebody who came over from TikTok or whatever, and is assuming that the church, that our conversations are not fair, intelligent, fair, and kind. And I thought, you know what? This is a good example of something that was a little bit, we're talking about conflict. We're talking about some difficult things, but we were trying to understand one another. And so that's where I want to start with this, is I think our first lesson about this is what you said. It's, can we have grace with each other? Okay. So I'm going to read then a couple of harder comments, because this was a little microcosm also of some of the other things that were being said, which were a little more difficult. And I'm just going to dip into this because otherwise we would be here all day. So one of the very next comments after that fair, intelligent, and kind I think the next comment was men need therapy. It's not an inherently male trait to not know what's going on the inside. Women aren't born with a superpower of emotion. We do this crazy thing called introspection on a regular basis. Go to therapy or sit with yourself regularly, figure out how you feel, stop shoving it down or walking away to play games. Get in touch with yourself more, and suddenly you'll know what's going on inside of you when you're in an argument. And first of all, there is a bitterness there.
Sure.
There is a hurt there, but hey, that's reality,
and
right? There are some
if you
people.
don't understand or don't believe in the differences, you think we're wired completely the same, you should be able to do what I do.
And okay, so let's address that first. By the way, we're not going to be able to like go into detail. We've got a whole podcast on processing. I don't know whether it will have come out by the time that we drop this one, but if it has, we'll put it in the show notes. However, just as a quick aside for anyone to be aware, you may be skeptical about this. You're going to have to sort of take it at face value that this is settled science. There is just a difference between the male brain and the female brain, especially in verbal processing, and often the time that is needed for most men, not all, but most men, and there's a difference in the time needed between men and women in most cases.
See, here's the thing. It at least for me, the way I explain it, is that it's when we can view the physical differences between men and women, and they are there. You can see
tell
them.
them. Yep.
You can watch, men and women in opportunities to expand strength or whatever. There's
Yes.
just physical differences, and we can see that and we can acknowledge that. But when you can't,
Which most people are willing to.
most are willing to.
Not all.
Not all, of
but
course.
most, yeah.
But when you can't see the difference, when it's internal within the individual, we assume that it's not there. We assume
or it's
that
hard to believe
it's
sometimes.
hard to
It's-
believe
yeah.
because we can't see it. And the fact of the matter is, if there are those physical differences that we can see, could there not also be those differences that we can't see?
Great way of
but are
putting it.
going on internally.
So,
and I
yes.
truly believe in our research, and the research volumes of research on this
Yeah.
indicate
Well,
and say that there is
like I said,
differences.
we can't go into
Yeah.
all the details, but I mean, anything from the reams of studies to our private conversations with neuroscientists, like
Right.
it's just, it just
They're
is.
different.
Yeah. So here's the question
Mm-hmm.
that comes out of this: slightly angry, slightly bitter. Maybe I shouldn't say slightly. This hurt comment, right?
Yeah.
There is an interesting question in there, though, which is, okay, we do this thing as women called introspection, right? Like we try to figure out what we're feeling. It is a skill to try to understand what we're doing. And I have seen over the years you, Jeff, build up that skill because of our research. Now, we had a professional reason for this, but even before we had a professional reason, I saw you trying to understand. It just, you're trying to understand something that isn't maybe a natural thing.
Yeah. So let me speak to how I particularly
Yes.
address these things. And because we haven't done the research, I can't say that all men do it this way, the same way Jeff does it, or it occurs with all men the same way it occurs with me. It's just, this is a data point of one.
Okay.
So when you and I are at odds, yeah,
Never happens.
Never happens. Yeah. So when we're at odds and I am really struggling to figure out, sometimes, I mean, almost all the time, I don't go and then sit and isolate myself and think about this.
You're not,
at
let me
that
go
moment
sit in
and
my
figure this
chair
out.
and think.
And that's
Okay.
what she said. You do a lot of introspection as women. That's what she said.
Well,
so
it could be while you're doing the dishes.
well,
right?
and so for me, I need to be doing something else. And I'm actually maybe not even thinking 100% about our particular conflict that we just had.
Huh.
I'm doing something else. And this happens in lots of areas of my life. And while I'm doing something else, thinking maybe something else, that spark of understanding can hit me. And I can go, oh, this is why this triggered me
It like comes
so
up at
much.
some point
At some
in the
point,
day.
and it
Yeah.
does kind of feel random. Maybe I could exercise the muscle and make that happen, on demand. But for me, I don't. I have to be out doing something else. I need to be getting distance, physically as well as mentally. And then in those kind of moments, that idea, that illumination, whatever you want to call
The aha
it,
moment.
yeah, can kind of hit me.
So it sounds a little bit like and this is also what we talked about in a different podcast episode in the processing chapter of For Women Only, about understanding how men need that processing time. One of the things that maybe women can use to understand this is sort of the feeling of when you're sitting around with a group of girlfriends and you're like processing something that happened with a kid. And this made me so upset, and I couldn't believe the school did this. And you're talking and you're thinking things through as you're talking them through. And then one person says, oh, well, maybe this is why that made you upset. Or maybe this is, what should have happened instead. And you go, yes, that's right. That's a great way of putting it. And it happens often in community, and it happens in verbal processing. With men, maybe slightly more likely, because of it's easier for men to think things through while they're not talking it through. It's that same thing, but it's you and your brain cells talking.
For sure, yes. Yes,
Okay.
all of us, because for the most part, we don't in those moments
Yeah.
gather with other guys and unpack it and talk about it. And for the guys that, for the women who wish that he would.
Wish that he would. Well, that's going to be one of the questions, but keep going.
No, I'm just, it tends to be how, I don't know whether it's cultural, whether it is biological, but this is how at least Jeff works through these things, oftentimes on his own.
Yeah.
I mean, there are occasions when I'll really, really need the input from good brothers and folks who I know and trust.
Which is actually, okay, so skipping to one of the other questions was men aren't willing to do that. And basically the comment was, it doesn't seem like men are willing to put in that work to do that. Do you think that that's a fair question?
I'm sure
comment?
there are some, that aren't.
Okay.
I mean, look, there's some guys that just, I'm going to ignore it and hope it goes away. And, some of the tragic stories.
Ignore the conflict, and I'm going to leave and hope she gets over
out,
it.
exactly,
and hope it goes
not
away.
deal with
Okay.
it. And that certainly happens in relationships. I wouldn't say, though, that that's just all men, because it's not. It's just that the way we are going about processing this just looks different from y'all.
Yeah.
And
if you don't know what you shared in that clip as a guy, you don't realize that that's painful.
Sure.
To her.
And again, here's the point from just the beginning when we said, the goodwill toward one another, and not being able to see what's going on internally within the other person. Because I'm able to somewhat, or I need to get distance and unplug from that particular issue or conflict moment, I'm assuming she does too.
Ah.
And so I'm not necessarily thinking that I'm causing you pain. I'm not at all wanting to do that. I'm focused on myself and trying to figure out and wanting to not be frustrated or triggered or upset. And I'm not thinking that my walking away is causing you to be frustrated, triggered, and upset.
Yeah.
And because I can't see what's going on
inside of me
you.
either.
Right.
So if you had a little, and so here's, I guess, one of the things for people to think through, especially if you have a little skepticism about this question of, is it that when he walks away to get space that he's just being selfish?
Right.
Right. Okay. And that, as you point out, that does
Sure,
absolutely,
of
that will
course.
happen on occasions. But that's not most men. And instead, the I guess the issue is if he could somehow magically open up a window in, like, peel back her
Sure.
head and see pain, pain,
Oh,
pain as he walks away, and this are we okay feeling, tell me what would happen instead.
well, most guys aren't monsters. I mean, he
Yes.
loves this person.
Yes.
He, of course, wouldn't want to inflict pain on her, on something as easily remedied as being able to reassure her that, I hope you're not feeling this way because you're worried about this. Because don't be worried about this. Don't be worried about us not making it through this.
This
We're
is
going to
just
be
an
okay.
argument. Yeah.
It's an argument. I wish it wasn't, but it is. And that seems to be something that happens in life. And so we're going to address it. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get beyond it. But my goodness, I really don't want my need for some solitude, some privacy, some all of those things to be, taking my frustration and just throwing it on you. I don't want that. I mean, he's not a monster.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's looking at all these comments. I think that's one of the misunderstandings is the assumption that he knows that this is a painful thing and he's kind of just like, I don't want to deal with it. As opposed to maybe he doesn't want to deal with it, because I'm sure that happens, but that he does not realize that walking away and not giving some reassurance and just trying to escape, he just doesn't know.
Look,
So,
from the earliest days of our research, when it was nascent, when you were just starting and we were having conversations with couples,
yes.
and you were trying to figure out what's going on inside the heart and mind of a man, because you were writing that novel and you were
Yes.
trying to put thoughts in a guy's, in your character's head, and you didn't know what was going on. And as you were explaining the situations to men, and they would say, this is what I'd be thinking.
When I would say, here's the scene,
Here's the
what would you
scene.
be thinking?
And the surprise that during those kind of interviews that you'd be having, the surprise for me and for the other guys that were there was that y'all didn't know these things about us, what was going on inside of us. The surprise was that you were surprised.
Yeah, no, and that actually was the other wives were surprised. That's what led to the whole everything that we're doing today is recognizing that there were actually these differences that made such an impact every single day.
And we don't know that about the other.
We don't. And I gosh, I have so many of these questions that I would love to get to, but just in the big picture, because we do kind of have to wrap this up. In the big picture, I want to read one other comment, and I think that it could be from a man, it could be from a woman. There are plenty of other, hey, blue shirt man, clap, 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 right? But I want to get your honest take for the women out there on what this person says. I actually think men do know what sometimes is happening within themselves, but sometimes there is just simply a severe lack of receptivity from women in accepting how we actually feel. Okay, so this is a guy. In accepting how we actually feel. Women often have zero comprehension to men's experience, even when we communicate it. And then he talks about how, and it's difficult to communicate it. And sometimes you feel like there isn't a care about how you feel. And so you just shut down. And I'm curious what you think about that, because that is not good for anybody. And so as we sort of wrap this up, how would you encourage both men and women in thinking through this, these differences, in being able to say, I am different, I feel different on the inside, and I hope you're willing to accept that I am different on the inside.
Yeah, gosh, there's a lot there.
There is. And I know that that's a lot as we
It
head
is,
toward the end of this
and
podcast.
particularly
but
for a guy who processes
slowly.
slow.
I
So
know.
here
Well,
you threw this on me.
Well, can I start by saying
Sure.
something you've
Well,
told me?
before you do that,
Okay,
and then
yeah.
I think one of the challenges that we as humans, and I'm not just saying you as women or us as men, but all of us, we kind of get into our minds this idea of what should be or how you should be
Yeah.
in your ability to relate to me.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes because of, again, those physical differences, and I might even say sometimes physical deficiencies, yeah, you should be able to, do this particular physical activity, but you may have some type of disability, some type of hindrance that prevents you from operating the way that others do. And I think it's kind of like you take that person that you're in relationship with, all physical, internal, all of those things, the way that they are and the way that God has built them. It's not to say that you just simply
Put up with yeah.
bad behavior or anything like that we can control. But there are times when that should be just leads to a level of frustration in us instead of with the grace and goodwill of saying, okay, she's different than me. Therefore, she doesn't react like I do or like I wish she did. But this is what I've got to work with. And let me try to bring her along in a way that can help her grow in this area, but not from a kind of commanding,
Yeah.
a domineering point of view. And, I think the same way toward us as guys. Same thing, that we are different. And I know you wished I was different a lot of times. I know you do.
Well, I mean, as the years have gone on.
As the years have gone on, but
Maybe less.
you've not permitted that. You've not allowed that to create in you a permanent level of frustration
Yes.
with my behavior.
And I think that's where we want to wrap this up, is that for us to have these thriving relationships, we need to know what each other wants and needs.
Correct.
Like which is why this went viral, is because so many people are like, oh my gosh, like the colleague, who said, I was able to explain to my boyfriend what I needed before he walked away,
Right.
so that he could say, something like, look, we're okay. I'm just angry. Like, I just need some space. And all of that is good. It's the key. And all those are good practical steps. The key is not to assume that there's something wrong with that.
Correct.
And that we are just working with each other as humans. I don't really understand why some people get so exercised about the fact that there are differences between men and women. I don't understand why that's a hard thing to accept, but maybe it's because I've been doing this for so long. I don't remember back in the day when I probably used to think that way too. Regardless of whether it's gender differences, regardless of whether it's human differences, I guess what we want to leave you with on this episode of I Wish You Could Hear This is to have grace with one another and encourage those who you love, who maybe are navigating relationships for the first time, to be okay with and embrace those differences as a strength and something that having grace will give them a much better foundation for the future. So thanks for being with us on I Wish You Could Hear This today. And thank you, Jeff, for being willing to do this last minute.
Okay. Last time that you're going to ask me this, right?
Well, if we have a good idea over coffee, we may do another one of these.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for listening to I Wish You Could Hear This. Remember to subscribe to our podcast And as always, forward today's audio or video link to a friend, counselor, or pastor who would be encouraged.